You know, it's almost impossible to follow politics these days. One month, the government completely shuts down, and then in the next one, the Senate passes ENDA, virtually offering gay people the same and equivalent rights as any other tax-paying American citizen. Well, who better to talk about civil rights, where things are going, and where the elections will end up in the next couple of years than former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, former presidential candidate and former emeritus chair of the Democratic National Committee, Howard Dean. And Governor Dean, let's just talk for a moment about what's going on with these rights and where do you see it going now in the future?
I've always thought that, I thought as a result of what I learned from doing the first marriage equality bill in Vermont in 1999, or 2000, I guess, that gay rights is the canary in the coal mine of human rights. If you can be, for a lot of people, it's different human rights, but in most societies, the hardest bridge to cross is the gay rights issue. And if you can be good on gay rights, you're going to be pretty good. If you can't be good on gay rights, you're really not much of a civil liberties person.
I think Hippocrates would be tap dancing right now in that you're a doctor, you're a physician, your oath is not only to do no harm, but correct harm whenever you find it. And for you to be consistent with that, as you have for so many years, we're starting to see the effects, I think, of your influence, particularly in the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, as the chair, the way you look at the world, the way you impress your psychology upon it, we're starting to see outcomes. We have the Supreme Court recently granting gay people rights to get married in California, while simultaneously, the day before, disenfranchising maybe 40 million people of color. Bittersweet indeed. Does that, I wonder, split the Democratic Party, since both empirically probably are Democratic voters? Good.
No,
bad?
I saw somebody, I forgot who wrote this, but I think that, first of all, there are two things that matter. I think because of what Obama has said and done, that there will not be another Democratic nominee for president who doesn't support same-sex marriage. That's pretty extraordinary. Secondly, I think that what Obama did last summer when he supposedly evolved and decided he was going to embrace same-sex marriage, the most important
overnight, by the way, it was a miracle.
Well, yes, I wonder if it will be canonized by the Catholic Church. I somehow doubt it. But the thing that was so impressive to me about that was not just that he was the first president to say something like that, is the impact it had in the black community. You know, the minority communities in this country are a little more socially conservative. Latino and black, Asian American immigrant communities are a little more socially conservative than some of the other folks. And for Obama to say that, he waded into it, not just a national debate, he waded into a debate in his own community about this. It's a really big deal. And there are a fair number of African-American preachers who aren't so great on gay rights issues. And there are others who have really understood for a long time that civil rights are civil rights, and it has nothing to do with whether you're comfortable with people or you like them or you don't like them. Everybody has to have human rights, or nobody has real human rights. And for Obama to say what he said last summer, I thought was so exceptionally extraordinary, because it moved the debate so far down the line in the African-American community. It was a very, very important thing. So it turns out that this president probably hasn't gotten enough credit for I think the risk-taking he did and the devotion to human rights that he has. And I certainly have been critical of him on things like healthcare, but this is a really big deal.
I'm wondering what, speaking of the day before, people in California, gay people, my people, got the right to get married again. Now we have to find a boyfriend or a partner. Maybe you can wield some influence in that direction for me. I certainly...
The ENDA of the gay community? Great.
I'm wondering what Congress, who does have an interest in the 14th Amendment, which gives us a level voting playing field, having everybody in Alabama and Mississippi and Texas now at the whim of, now you got to stand on your head, do a little Jim Crow dance, recite the Declaration of Independence in Pig Latin, et cetera, in order to vote. What do you imagine Congress is going to do to try to bring us back to everybody gets to go vote equally now?
I don't think Congress is going to do anything, because the right wing controls the House, and they have no interest in this. They're the ones that took this, the ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, or whatever it's called, funded by the Koch brothers, basically is behind all these bills that are taking rights to vote away. So I don't think you're going to see that. Alec really essentially is one of the sort of the group of people who are running the Republican Party in the House. I think what you are going to see, though, is what this is a pathetic attempt of a dwindling minority to hold on to their power. It's not going to happen. This country is changing too fast. There are many more different kinds of people that are Americans today than there were these folks were growing up. And this is a lot of this is this politics of resentment, and it's not going to succeed. And America is a better place than that. And so it's going to fail eventually because demographics are going to overcome them. What they're doing is postponing the inevitable, which is growing up and behaving themselves and understanding that America really is a diverse place. It's not okay just to say it. We actually have to live it. So I think Obama's second election has been really critical. Not the first one was critical, but the second one reaffirmed that this country has changed forever, and I think in a very positive way.
Well, and we could certainly...
And so the Voting Rights Act, which is a travesty, I mean, this is an extra constitutional court in many ways. They don't really rely on the Constitution for their major decisions. There's nothing constitutional in there that suggests that they couldn't have voting rights. What they really should have done is say it's unconstitutional to apply it to a few places, so we're going to apply it every place.
Right.
Because everybody ought to have a right to vote. But they didn't do that because they have a political agenda.
And if you have two groups, the people of color and the gays, one gets disenfranchised one day, the other one gets enfranchised, and they're both likely to vote Democratic, and somebody, let's just fantasize, you were to run again for president, that's a fantasy that many of us would like to see, that disrupts a big voting bloc, potentially.
Well, the problem is they've overlooked the worst thing they've done is not just diss the people of color in the gay community. The stupidest thing they did was diss the voting bloc that's the majority of the population, which is women. They're busy trying to strip women of every possible right you can think of.
And just
they're doing
strip women, period.
Yeah. I mean, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Texas, all run by extremist right-wing governors. And it's outrageous what they're doing there, and they're going to get clobbered. I mean, there's not enough voting rights districts. You can redistrict all kinds of people, minorities, but it's going to be really hard to redistrict women out of your voting districts in Congress. And I mean, I just look at this and I say, what is this talk about rebranding the Republican Party? You wanted to rebrand them as the Taliban? Because that's what they're doing. It's unbelievable.
I'm laughing because I agree. I'm not laughing because that's funny, even though it's funny.
Well, they're going to lose, assuming we continue to be a democratic nation. I mean, this is the last dying gasp of the rump of the Republican Party, and there are actually some fairly enlightened Republicans, most of whom have been driven out of the Republican Party and register as independents these days. I mean, I know a lot of Republicans who can't vote Republican because of this craziness: anti-women, anti-gay, anti-minority, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim. I mean, by the time you end up all these groups, you're vying for 35% of the electorate. It's crazy.
Yeah, and as the rump, I mean, you look up the word fundament, it means rear end, buttocks, ass, whatever, in the dictionary. So a fundamentalist would be one who speaks...
I have to say, I didn't know that.
You're welcome to use it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, are you allergic to imagining possibly running for president again?
Well, what I've said is I've said a number of things about that. You never say never in politics, but once you do it, you realize how incredibly hard it is. The first time it was easy for me to get in. I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. And it's really hard. So, I think I'm inclined not to. And I actually think that we don't often go back a generation in this country. We have a president now who I don't agree with all the time, as you well know, but who represents a new generation. And the new generation, these young people under 30, under 35, put him in office. It was a stunning, of all the extraordinary things, the Latino vote, the African-American vote, the younger person's vote was the most extraordinary numbers that we haven't seen, and they came back the second time. And so this is a president, we've changed generations. A new generation is sort of in charge. They're now electing presidents. So I think for the electorate to go back and elect somebody from the older generation, which is me, is not so much likely to happen. And there are plenty of really great, young, qualified people to run. Most likely, if Hillary runs, I'll be supporting her. But there are some great people who are younger. Martin O'Malley Kirsten Gillibrand, a senator from New York, who's terrific.
Yeah.
And there's a long list of people who are great. So I don't really. The answer is I'm not inclined to do this again because I think I'm sure there's going to be some great candidates. I don't think I necessarily have to be one of them.
On the other hand, some of us think it might be a necessity, but I'll leave it at that. Quick thought. You mentioned the younger people, and it is critical. We've got 80 million, roughly, millennials. Many of them carry loans for, $80,000, $100,000 just to pick up a textbook. And Congress decided to go on holiday when the debt for them, or the interest payments, basically doubled. That's a rather appalling thing. If you live in Europe and look at it, you go, you're kidding. We live here, it's like, well, yeah. But, 80 million people. I wonder what we can do about that.
Well, I think Elizabeth Warren has the best bill. The United States lends money to the banks at a current interest rate of 0.75%. Seems to me our students ought to get the same deal. That wouldn't cost us money. Everything we make over and above that, we're just squeezing out of the students. And here's the long-term implication of this. I believe this is going to be the next really major financial crisis. There's over $1 trillion worth of debt out there. And I think pretty soon it's going to become so oppressive to these students that somebody's going to go on, one of these change.org or purpose.com or something like that, and they're going to arrange a group of folks, and you're going to get 500,000 kids who say, I'm not paying. And then what are you going to do? You can't throw them all in jail or whatever. So I see this is already a crisis that's gone too far. This is a bad way to finance higher education. The higher education establishment is partly responsible for this. This is not just kids who take on too much debt.
Yeah.
The Republican candidate for president last time was saying, get the best college you can, and then get money from your parents. Go borrow the money. Get it any way you can. Well, that's the wrong advice. So I think we're already involved in a major crisis. It's going to get worse, and probably there's not much Congress can do about it. But I do think what they should do about it is pass Elizabeth Warren's bill.
And she certainly is admired by so many of us and has the ear. And I know that you're putting out the right mojo and Disney magic there, without Disney, of course, to make sure that the right twinkle is heard. Do you feel that people the wrong people are a little more open to doing the right thing? Do they get that they're exposing themselves to collapse and calamity, chaos, collusion, cabal?
Washington has always been out of step with the rest of the country. The trouble is the internet is moving everything so fast that Washington is now further behind than they've ever been. And this is like having a group of people who are informed by the Pony Express. It's incredible. They just have no idea what's going to happen to them because they have no idea what the real problems are, because this is not a generation that ran into this kind of debt. And a lot of these folks in Congress did work themselves through college. It's not the same thing. The debt levels here are enormous. There's people graduating. I know a state legislator, for example, who went through law school. She has something like $200,000 worth of debt, and her income is, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 a year. You're never going to pay that off.
You will in 80 years.
No, you can't even pay it off in 80 years and eat. And God forbid you have children and want to send them to college. This is a crazy system. It's already broken, and they're going to have to, not only are they going to have to fix the interest rate problem in the short term, they're going to have to do something much bigger on a bigger scale. And of course, the government has guaranteed all this debt, and people's parents have signed for it. So this is a really big, catastrophic problem. In the long run, this may cause more trouble than the deficit.
I would think. I mean, you have people who are agitated because their basic needs are not met. Maslow's hierarchy, food, water, shelter. When people feel that they actually need to do the things they need to survive, they'll act out. We can't say what that looks like. We've certainly seen lots of behaviors in the last year at schools and horrific, unimaginable things going on. But you've got a country that's armed with some 310 million guns that we know of, and a lot of people who are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, and a Congress that acts like House of Cards, living. Isn't that a wonderful show, by the way, on Netflix?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's unbelievable.
Trust me, you'll love it. And they like you in that show, so you'll love it twice.
All right.
So you've got all this agitation fomenting. I wonder if these same guys that are misbehaving because they're clueless would actually try to crack down then on 80 million people who are just trying to eat.
I don't think so. I think. I mean, really, basically, you're asking me if there's going to be a vigilante reaction. There could be small, isolated incidents of that by people who are armed to the teeth, but the students are not likely to. I don't think we're going to see armed insurrection anytime soon in the United States.
Good. I can sleep at night. Thank you, Governor Dean. Harrison with you, and this is The Smart Show.
The Smart Show with Harrison.
I think of your influence, particularly in the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, as the chair, the way you look at the world, the way you impress your psychology upon it, we're starting to see outcomes. We have the Supreme Court recently granting gay people rights to get married in California, while simultaneously, the day before, disenfranchising maybe 40 million people of color. Bittersweet indeed. Does that, I wonder, split? And Governor Dean, let's just talk for a moment about what's going on with these rights, and where do you see it going now in the future?
I've always thought that, I thought as a result of what I learned from doing the first marriage equality bill in Vermont in 1999, or 2000, I guess, that gay rights is the canary in the coal mine of human rights. If you can be, for a lot of people, it's different human rights, but in most societies,
the Democratic Party, since both empirically probably are Democratic voters, good,
no,
bad.
I saw somebody, I forgot who wrote this, but I think that, first of all, there are two things that matter. I think because of what Obama has said and done, that there will not be another Democratic nominee for president who doesn't support same-sex marriage. That's pretty extraordinary. Secondly,
it's almost impossible to follow politics these days. One month, the government completely shuts down, and then in the next one, the Senate passes ENDA, virtually offering gay people the same and equivalent rights as any other tax-paying American citizen. Well, who better to talk about civil rights, where things are going, and where the elections will end up in the next couple of years than former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, former presidential candidate, and former emeritus chair of the Democratic National Committee, Howard Dean.
The hardest bridge to cross is the gay rights issue. And if you can be good on gay rights, you're going to be pretty good. If you can't be good on gay rights, you're really not much of a civil liberties person.
I think Hippocrates would be tap dancing right now, in that you're a doctor, you're a physician. Your oath is not only to do no harm, but correct harm whenever you find it. And for you to be consistent with that, as you have for so many years, we're starting to see the effects